Oh, spare
Right,
shake.
good evening, everyone. Welcome to our new world. It's we're still getting used to. So, good evening and welcome to JW3 TV. I'm Judy Trotter, Head of Adult Education. I know those of you on Zoom know that, but we're also being joined tonight. We're streaming through to Facebook and YouTube, which is the first time we've done the Zoom, Facebook and YouTube. So fingers crossed that everything goes smoothly. This has been an extraordinary period and we've had to move from our building to being an online community. This has opened up great new opportunities with very generous offers. So our profound thanks to Anat for reaching out to us and for Greg to acting as our connector. Those on Zoom, you will see I have muted you all so that we can improve the quality that we'll get. And I would suggest that once we start, you also turn your video off, but I'll leave that to you. We're happy to take questions, but the way to do that is on the chat. And I will try and keep an eye on Facebook and take questions from Facebook as well, and YouTube if I can do all three. It may not work, so I apologize if I don't get to your question. And now a few words from Raymond Simonson, our CEO. I just have to unmute him before he can do that. There we go. Raymond, over to you with thanks.
Thank you, Judy. One thing we've learned in this last couple of weeks of working like this is that my family would love to have a mute and unmute button for me. But I'm afraid it's just when we're on these Zoom meetings. So good evening, everyone. Erev Tov to everyone, and particularly wonderful to see you there, Anat. I haven't seen you since we last met at a Limud conference in probably either Nottingham or Warwick, whenever you were last there. So it's really lovely to see you, and I look forward to seeing you in person in real life in the not too distant future. Friends, those of you that know us know that what we are really dedicated to at JW3 is continuously increasing the quality, the variety and the volume of Jewish conversation in London and beyond. And as Judy says, just because our physical doors have closed, that hasn't stopped us continuing with this mission now. We also really aim to try and connect people together. So it's really lovely to see all of you on the screen there. And whilst we're all keeping our physical distancing, we can actually still keep a sense of community and togetherness. So it's a real delight that we have Anat with us this evening. She has been one of these people that has inspired me for many years, and I'm sure many of you. So when Greg, who I think is on the call somewhere, said to me, would you like me to ask Anat if she's available? He didn't even have to finish the sentence before I nearly bit his hand off and said yes. I remember that it was only a few years ago, she was listed as one of the 50 most influential Jews by the Jerusalem Post. And in Globe, she was named as one of Israel's top women activists in 2018. These are just some of the accolades she has. I've heard her tell a story before of being a champion swimmer for Israel. I'm not sure any of the swimming stories will come up today, but as people have said to her before, this is where she first learned to dive headfirst into the deep end. And that's something that she's been doing throughout her career. She is, as I think you all know, the executive director of the incredible organization, the Israel Religious Action Center. She has been really at the forefront of the effort to advance religious pluralism in the state of Israel for many years. I think 17, 18 years by now. And I think one of the things that we all know about is this incredible campaign, the Women at the Wall, ensuring women have their rights to daven at the kotel. So I'm going to stop there, and that is one of the heroes for many of us in the UK. And we're just going to hand over to you, Anat. Erev Tov and Brucha haba.
Toda rabba, thank you. So first, I'm honored to be invited. I resist many requests and resist many things, but I never say no to Greg. So it was really his initiative. And if you are there, Greg, Erev Tov to you, and stay safe and stay sane. I wanted to just tell you a few some of my thoughts at this really challenging and unusual time. One is this question of a journey as we are preparing for Seder night. Are you aware that the distance between Goshen and Israel is only 735 kilometers? Which means that if we walked from Goshen at the pace of 5 kilometers an hour for 7 hours a day, we could complete the journey within 6 days. So what the hell were we doing for 40 years wandering in the Sinai desert? We could have walked the distance 500 times back and forth. We could have walked to the moon. So sometimes maybe to be really liberated, it's a long journey. It doesn't end when you think it should. And I think we are still on this quintessential quest for liberation. Israel is undergone this year 3 election campaigns. We are split down the middle, and right now, under the threat of having a 4th election campaign, we may have a unity government. Labor Party, that in recent history was the major mover and shaker and builder of Israel, the party of Yitzhak Rabin, of Shimon Peres, of David Ben Gurion, is basically disappearing, and that Amir Peretz, the head of labor, has just asked this just a few hours ago to join Kahol Lavan and become part of Kahol Lavan. So it's even hard to say that the Labor Party in Israel apparently is disappeared. Quite shocking. Anyway, even though the excuse for this unity government is the coronavirus, of course, and that there's a challenge that the pandemic requires us to work together. Negotiations ended a few hours ago on the issue of who's going to choose judges. Now, it's not like 10 judges are going to be chosen in the next hour. The next judge that has to be appointed to the Supreme Court is a year from now. And yet the negotiations ended just a few hours ago with a big explosion over who's going to. So the question is, are we having a huge catastrophe at this very moment and we need to have a unity government? Or are we going to explode the whole negotiation over something that will happen a year from now? It's very confusing. The truth is, I look at the results of the election, and it's hard to explain to you what's happening in Israel. Basically, I can say that the people who got more votes, 62 votes, 62 members of Knesset, are a very broken, fragmented bloc. And the group that got less votes, the ones that got 58 votes, are a very solid bloc. That's Netanyahu. And this is how 58 is bigger than 62. Besides, the coronavirus, the pandemic changed the results of the election in that it forced Kahol Lavan to split, and the Blues went into the government with Netanyahu. The Whites stayed and are going to head the opposition. I wanted to show you, I don't know if you can see it on, can you see, if I show you something, can you see it? Okay, this is a, how do you say? A kamea. Does anyone know how to say kamea in English? Amulet. This is an amulet that was given by Shas. This is a amulet that was given by Shas to everyone who voted for the Shas party in Israel. It has, you see a picture of Ovadia Yosef on the front. And inside there is a plea with a very unforgiving God to please not kill us and be merciful with us, even though we are, some of our women don't cover their heads and some of us don't observe Shabbat in a very good way. I must tell you that I don't relate to a God like that, a God that is that is so angry, that needs to be appeased in such an extreme way. The God I believe in believes in community, something like what we're doing right now, and believes in the worth of every individual, every human being. Every one of us deserves to be saved and deserves to be safe and respected and loved, and that kind of God. But if I had an amulet like this, an amulet to give people, I understand that some people need something to hold on. I'd like to remind us of what are the values that keep us, shared values that keep us in community. One is the value of tolerance, loving the stranger, not doing unto the stranger what the Egyptians did to us. You'll have to excuse me a minute because my earphones the battery went out of my earphones. So just hold on, technical issue. Here we go. A second shared value that we have is equality. I would put that on our amulets to remind ourselves that all of us are equal. And in Israel, it's a particular challenge since 22% of our population is not Jewish, are the Arab citizens of Israel. As we are fighting the coronavirus, you should know that 34% of all doctors in Israel are Arab, and higher than that, I think around 40% is our nursing staff is Arab, pharmacologists and lab technicians. In fact, our whole health system is heavily dependent on the Arab minority of Israel. They are our heroes of health, and there are many very moving stories about how Jewish Arab teams are saving lives this very minute. And this is one thing I'd like to remind Israelis and Jews around the world, that the Arab minority in Israel is busy saving more lives in every given day than have participated in terror since 1948, meaning that they're not the enemy. They are actually, in my opinion, the witnesses that will testify that we belong in this neighborhood, and we should treat them equally, and we should learn their language if we want to fit here. And another one of the shared values we have is religious pluralism. As you know, in Israel, only Orthodoxy is recognized by the state as a viable stream of Judaism. Only Orthodox rabbis are ordained and considered rabbis by the state. Reform and conservative rabbis cannot officiate in a wedding, cannot officiate in a conversion, and actually cannot have any official role in the official religion of Israel. This is very upsetting, and I must say, I've devoted quite a bit of my adult life to try to fix that. Under equality, I also would like to mention the issue of women of the wall that you mentioned in the beginning. The women of the wall have 4 strategic goals. We want to pray out loud at the wall. We want to put on phylacteries at the wall. We want to pray and we want to read from the Torah at the wall. And we want to put on a top. All these actions, all these 4 actions were considered a criminal act. In fact, until recently, women were arrested for wearing a talit or saying Shema Yisrael out loud, or for attempting to bring a Torah to the wall. Women of the wall, in their tenacity, and this is one tenacious group, were able to change the laws. It is now legal for a woman to wear a talis, to put on phylacteries, to pray out loud, to read Megillah, to light the menorah, to bless the Arba'a Minim, the lulav on Sukkot, to dance, to say Kaddish. All these activities are allowed. The one thing that is still illegal is for women to read from the Torah. This is a challenge because girls who want to have a bat mitzvah at the wall, they do need to read Torah in order to have a bat mitzvah. And if women don't have access to a Torah, there's a problem. Just so to make it a little more complex, we are allowed to read. We're not allowed to bring the object from which to read. That is, women are allowed to read Torah, but they're not allowed to have access to the Torah scroll. There are 200 Torah scrolls. They're all in the men's department, the men's side. So women are trying to sneak Torah to the wall. And what's happening now at the wall is that only 10 people are allowed at the wall plaza. All these 10 are of the male persuasion. Women are not allowed to go into the women's section. They're not counted. We still have some challenges here. Altogether, I think that the role of women in religion is the final frontier for us in feminism. We've looked at so many areas and worked on so many areas of women's equality, but this one is a biggie that we need to still work on. As you know, the issue of segregation of women for religious reasons is something that Israel is struggling with. Until recently, women were asked to move in an airplane if they boarded an El Al plane. They were asked to move if an ultra-Orthodox person refused to sit next to them. We put an end to that by representing a very brave Orthodox woman, 81 years old, Renee Rabinovich. She was asked to move on a business flight from Newark to Tel Aviv. She complained. We took her case to court. We sued El Al, and we won. And I would like to inform you that if you are on an El Al plane and an ultra-Orthodox person refuses to sit next to you and demands that the seating changes and that the whole plane is held up until he moves to a different place or you move to a different place, this is illegal. And all you need to do is find the flight attendant. If the flight attendant tells you to move because of your gender, either by word or by a gesture of her hand or any indication that tells you that you should be moving because of your gender, this is worth $18,000 in court in damages. And so far, we've been monitoring El Al, and we see that the policy has really changed. Flight attendants tell the ultra-Orthodox guy that he will have to forfeit his ticket and leave the plane, lose his suitcases for a week, because this is no longer possible to ask a woman to move because someone doesn't want to sit next to her. It's not that I want to force ultra-Orthodox men to sit next to women, not at all. But I think this should be taken care of earlier, the way they take care of getting a glatt kosher meal. They should take care of who they're sitting next to. You can't board the plane with a boarding pass, which is a contract, actually. Look at the person sitting next to you and say, I'm not willing to sit next, or my religion forbids me to sit next to you. That is humiliating. Just think, what if this was a Black person and they'd say, my religion forbids me to sit next to you. This has gone on long enough, and I'm glad we put an end to it. Renee Rabinovich is 83 years old. She is the hero of this case. Mother of 2, grandmother of 6, and great-grandmother of over 30 great-grandchildren. She is a Holocaust survivor, and judge in Israel, they wouldn't award her the full amount when she walked into the Israeli court. I'd love to take some questions if you want, so I know if you're interested to hear more about segregation of women, or you want to hear more on issues of tolerance or racism, or you just want to hear how Israel is tackling the coronavirus, what civil liberties we lost so far, and how we're going to attempt to get them back once Corona is over.
They're all very quiet so far, Anat.
Oh, so thank you, Angela, for this question. The question was, what gives you the strength to carry on? So at Women of the Wall, since this has been, 31 years struggle, what gives me the strength is the fact that I'm part of a community that has strength. At the times that I don't feel like waking up at some god-awful hour and walking to the wall just to be spat at and attacked by the powers that be, I do it because I don't want to leave my good friend. We call each other sisters. My sister Betsy, or my sister Tammy, or my sister Irena, to face the mob on their own. So many times, God forgive me, I'm not going for any reason other than to support and encourage the women of the wall who I admire from the bottom of my heart. I think there's a lot of strength in community, and what we're trying to build right now is community. And even though I live in Israel and I'm 2 hours away from you, we are a community. And in fact, my older son, Ariel, lives in Highgate, and he's part of your community, as I'm sure some of your sons and daughters live in Jerusalem, and they're part of my community. We are one people. And as we are preparing to celebrate our quintessential story, I think it's important for us to realize that the state of Israel, which is the fastest growing, largest Jewish community in the world, is probably the most historic and the most important Jewish project of our lifetime. And that's why I see you as partners in making Israel live up to its own dream and be a place where we could all be proud of. Remember being proud of Israel? There are many reasons to be proud of Israel. We invent almost everything in your cellular phone that you're holding right now, or the computer you're operating right now. Many of the components in these machines come from Israel. And if there will be a defense or a medicine against the coronavirus, very likely it will be from here, from Nes Ziona. They're working on it day and night. There are many reasons to be proud of Israel in agriculture, in culture, in technology. Where should we be ashamed of Israel? I think Jewishly, I'm ashamed of Israel. I'm heartbroken actually that the way Pesach is dealt with is not a holiday of liberation, but rather a holiday of servitude. And I'm not sure you realize, but if you are going now to a hospital in Israel to visit someone sick, you will be checked at the entrance of the hospital to find if you're carrying any chametz, that is food that's not kosher to Pesach, for someone in the hospital. I think this is wrong. It is wrong because I think it's reasonable that there'll be a place in the hospital where people who don't observe Pesach can have the food that their relatives brought them. Should I remind you again that almost a quarter of our population are not Jewish? Why should an Arab patient in Shaare Tzedek, a hospital like 100 meters away from my house, why should she bring matzah to her son who's struggling with corona when she eats pita and he eats pita and she doesn't know from Passover? Why is a Jewish policeman checking her bag to look for chametz? That's not his job. That's not what we should be doing. Certainly, I respect people who don't want to look at bread when they're in the hospital during Pesach. That's why I'm saying we should have an enclave in every floor in the hospital that is for chametz, but not to allow it into the hospital altogether, I think is cruel and unusual, and it ruins Pesach. I have many examples of ridiculous regulations that have to do with Passover that take us away from the idea of liberation and just take care, they just focus on the less important issues of Passover. Did you know that all the cosmetics in Israel have to be kosher lepesach? Like hand cream, shampoo, washing detergent, dog food. What does that have to do with kosher lepesach? Well, thank you for your question. Anyway, I hope I answered it.
Anat, it's Raymond again. I was wondering, I've heard you speak before about the role of Rivka Haut, and you've spoken positively about her, the great American
Feminist.
Orthodox Jewish feminist. So I wondered, what role now in the year 2020? What role does diaspora Jewry have in the fight for civil liberties in Israel, the fight for women's rights and other rights? What role can we play?
Well, first, I'd like to say that if you don't play a role, it will be in your watch that some god awful things are happening in Israel, and it will affect you, it will reflect on you, and yet I don't think you have the luxury of opting out. I think you must decide that this is a joint project, that you must be participants in the discussion. What are the Jewish values of the Jewish state? And if you see occurrences in Israel today that reflect that the Jewish values of Israel are ethnocentricity and racism and chauvinism, it's your time to holler and say no. I believe in different Jewish values. I believe in tolerance and equality and pluralism. Now, many Israelis will tell you, and sadly some of you buy into it, oh, you put up and shut up. You don't pay taxes in Israel. You don't send your children to the army in Israel. What right do you have to tell us what to do? This is such a cheap shot. It's a cheap shot because if Israel represents the Jewish values of the Jewish world, then every Jew has the right, has the goddamn duty to express the Jewish values he or she believes in and fight for them in Israel. Has nothing to do with paying taxes or with sending your children to the army. Just as a side note, half of the Israelis don't send their children to the army. In 2019, only 49% of the 18-year-old eligibles to the army went to the army. And besides, when we have a war, when we have a collapse, when we have a disaster, don't we run over to you and beg you to come and help? So why is it kosher to help Israel when we have a fire in the Carmel, and it's not kosher to help us when we're struggling with racism and discrimination? It's kosher. And I urge you, I'm an Israeli asking you, demanding from you, be active, change your media diet, learn what's happening in Israel, and write a letter to the prime minister, write a letter to me, so I will take the letter to the prime minister, write a letter in your papers, come to Israel and visit a few less Roman ruins and a few more live Israelis. We're trying to make a difference.
Thanks, Anat. This may be a basic question, but I realise I don't know what's happening with the wall at the moment. Has that been closed off? Have people been stopped going down to pray there? Is it still open and social distancing, or what is the situation with places that with the wall and other places like that?
The government decided that the wall is not going to be closed hermetically. 10 people are allowed to come and pray, but Judy, they're all of the male persuasion. Only 10 men are allowed to come to the wall every day. And if you are a woman and you want to come, you'll be asked to go back home, because the 10 already arranged it with the Western Wall Heritage Foundation, and women are not to be counted. Yeah.
Okay, not a
You're
lot.
not surprised, right?
No,
You're not surprised.
No one can't be surprised, but it's good to know. Thank you. And there's a thank you for Ilana for what you said with about Pesach, which is was powerfully put. The other question that we have is someone has read about visiting a mikveh during coronavirus. What are your thoughts on that? Obviously, there's a different kind of danger in visiting places that are possibly not.
Yeah, the government exempted mikvaot from places that have to be closed. Mikvaot are open. I'm not sure that this is I'm not sure how hygienic and how public safety is protected, but I know that mikvaot are open. You need to set up an appointment, only one person at a time. But it seems to me, as someone who knows something about swimming pools, that if there is a virus that people want to avoid, maybe we can find other solutions. I'm not saying that people should relinquish tradition, but the great thing about our culture is that we can find innovative solutions. We always found innovative solutions. One of the sad things that happened in Israel, that we became so rigid that we can't think of some innovation. If you look at the Aguna issue and others, that the suffering, particularly of women, is something that rabbis throw their hands in the air and say, well, it's halakha that prevents me from helping you. That's not true. I refuse to accept that halakha is rigid. Halakha is called halakha because it comes from the verb halach, which means move. They could have easily called it amada, which means to stand. And then we would have said that we have a rule of a special body of law called amada, but we don't have that. It's called halakha because it moves with the time, it walks with the time. It just that women's needs don't seem to figure out in this flexibility and elasticity. But the elasticity is built in. It's built in halakha. We should be so proud of our tradition in this way.
Thank you. And especially for that definition. And sorry, just to, because these things are what we're talking about a lot. Weddings had a special dispensation here, even when the services in shul stopped. Weddings were allowed to take place. I actually was able to go to one. That has now been stopped as well. I heard in Israel, I think just a couple of days ago, that you were still able to celebrate weddings. Is that still true?
Only, I think, 10 people and 4 or 5 family members. It's much smaller than it used to be. The thing is now it's funerals. People congregate in funerals, and that seems to be something the police is going to have to intervene.
So we've mostly moved on to doing that by Zoom as well as everything else.
Really, a funeral by Zoom?
Yes, I've attended 2 recently. I have to say it's not an experience one wants to have to do. It's very cold, and often it's just the beginning and the end, so you don't actually do the walk to the actual burial. Okay, on to something a little bit not more cheerful but different. Will Israel be able to maintain its Jewish identity if there's complete segregation between church and state? Can it be Jewish and democratic? So huge switch, sorry.
Look, this is a theoretical question because I don't believe Israel is even considering the idea of separation of church and state. Will we retain our Jewish identity? What is the Jewish identity of the Jewish state? Do you think that if everyone in Israel was ultra-Orthodox, observing all 613 mitzvot, we would be a more Jewish state than we are today? What makes us Jewish? Is it the observance of mitzvot, or is it that we adhere to the vision of the prophets of Israel that talked about a just society If you look at our Declaration of Independence, it begins with the words that we follow the vision of Haggai, Amos, Micha, Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, the prophets who cursed us out, who told us what it is. They would never have gotten into the Bible if the chief Rabbanut of Israel were in charge of the book. They had no filter, particularly Isaiah, and they rebuked us in no uncertain terms. I think that is the Jewish character of Israel. How we treat the other, how we treat the orphan, how we treat the widow, the weakest parts of society. It's not if Netanyahu is going to go to court and face the 3 charges against him for bribery, breach of trust, and fraud. That's not the ultimate measure of our justice. The ultimate measure of our justice is a poor kid from Eilat that got into trouble. Is he going to get justice? And what if this poor kid has special needs? And what if this poor kid is an Arab? And what if this poor kid is an Arab with special needs and also gay? Will he receive justice in Israel? I think that's where our character is going to be defined and measured. And right now, we're not in a very good place. I can't hear you.
Sorry, I've got to unmute myself. One more question on that, the coronavirus, and then something slightly different. The concern from the question of that the Orthodox in Israel are not observing social distancing at all. Is that because they're not being given any information, or because they don't think it applies to them? And is there anything that can be done to try and protect them?
I think this is a very broad statement, and it isn't correct. They do observe it. There is a minority that doesn't observe it. As a result, all the ultra-Orthodox are getting a bad rap, and I'm against broad statements about a minority because of the actions of very few. It's true that it took a while for the ultra-Orthodox in the ultra-Orthodox towns and neighborhoods to realize the dangers of coronavirus. They claim it's because they're not connected to the regular media. I'm not sure, because they're connected to the American ultra-Orthodox community, and there are 30, 40 funerals a day over there, and they know about that. So I'm not sure it has to do with not knowing. I think the idea of not congregating in synagogue, not coming to weddings and funerals, this was very, very hard for the public to accept, and their leadership was not forthcoming in making it very clear that this is very, very serious. So I hope very much that the leadership of the ultra-Orthodox community will have to face consequences for their short-sightedness and the slow speed with which they turned around to their community to have them save a life. I really hope that Rabbi Kanievsky and many others will be questioned about their very slow response.
Thank you. Do the modern Orthodox and non-Orthodox support your work? Do you find them supportive of what you're trying to do?
The modern Orthodox in Israel are the rarest birds I know. It's very hard to be a modern Orthodox person in Israel, and my great admiration goes to people who belong to that group, because they're attacked by the ultra-Orthodox and by the Orthodox, and they're also misunderstood by the seculars. It's very hard to be modern Orthodox, and particularly if you're a woman and you're a feminist. So I think the bravest feminists in Israel, the bravest feminists I know, are modern Orthodox women who are making a difference in changing Israeli Orthodoxy. This is my great admiration to them. The seculars root for my work. There's no question that seculars see the Israel Religious Action Center and Women of the Wall as a constant gadfly, organizations that push the ultra-Orthodox towards more tolerance and pluralism. So there's a lot of secular support.
And to simplify one question is, how do you find the resilience to keep going with the work you're doing? We're in such admiration of what you do.
I can't help it. It gives me a feeling. Look, maybe because of Corona, we're now thinking a bit about what is life about. And the Americans tell me that it's about the pursuit of happiness. I find happiness in the pursuit of meaning. It gives my life meaning. When I know for a fact that some of the things we've done change the lives of people for the better, particularly the weakest parts of society, that the head of my steering committee is the prophet Isaiah. And I ask him every once in a while, do you think we're doing the right thing? And if you read his first chapter, it gets worse as it goes on. But he just says, stop the ritual. The ritual is not as important as what kind of a society you have here. Ritual is an instrument to make you into a community that is a decent one. Or lagoim, to be a light unto the nations. It's been a while since I thought that nations should get their own electrician. But we should be a light, at least unto us. At least we should be decent. And some of the things Israel has chose to do recently are just indecent, should not be done. And I strongly urge anyone who's listening to me right now to link together with us, Israelis who want to make a difference, and visit us, support us, read about us, call us, badger us, be partners with us. It is an important project. I don't think the world's going to give us another chance to have a Jewish state. That's the only one on the planet. If there was another one, Judy, I'd be on the first plane going there. But since it's the only one, let's make it one we could be proud of.
Those are beautiful words to finish on, but I'm going to give you the chance to add anything else before I turn over to Raymond to end the evening. Some final words.
This is many years of marriage talking. I think that love is what remains after we know the truth. And I want you to learn the truth about Israel and see what kind of a love you have for it. People who love Israel and don't let themselves learn the truth about the country are really not willing to test that love in any way. I know the truth about Israel. I'm actually very aware of the warts on Israel's butt. And I think it's a wonderful thing. It's a great project. It's very exciting that a minority like us were able to have a state of our own. We're struggling now to ask ourselves, what are the Jewish values that should guide us? And we're turning to our partners around the world and we're asking them, what do you think are Jewish values? Where would you like to see Israel going? You are partners. Don't let anyone silence you. This reflects on you and affects you. It's not a spectator sport. Join us.
Lovely. Thank you. It's been lovely. And let me just turn now to Raymond to say some words of thank you.
What a privilege whilst we are sitting here physically locked away from people, but what a privilege to spend 45 minutes or so in the company of a genuine warrior, a hero, someone who has never taken the easy path, is always putting herself in the front line, in the firing line, who is really a lead through dugma ishit, through leading by personal example.
Thank you.
You really genuinely do inspire us. So I want to say to everyone that this year, however you are doing a Seder, and really I implore all of you, if anybody hasn't made the decision yet that they're going to stay in their own home to do it, I'm sure you've all decided that, but please, for the love of everyone, stay at home for your Seder. Whether you Zoom on your Seder to connect to people, or whether it's just two of you in your own home, have your Seders this year safely. And I implore you that when we get to that bit right near the end where we say, Bashana Haba'ah B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem, I want you to stop for a minute and think about this evening and think about, what is that Yerushalayim? What is that Israel that you want to see this time next year? And what are we going to do? What are you going to do to make that Israel, the Israel that Anat fights for every single day of her life, and that we collectively have responsibility for? Because we know that Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'Zeh, that we are all collectively responsible for each other and for Israel. So Anat, on that, I'd like to just say thank you. Chag Sameach to you and to all of you. May you all find your personal freedom this Pesach.
Amen.
Thank you, Rahman. Thank you all. Stay safe and thank you, Anat.
A big squire.
Did you see that?
Thank you,
Who
Judy.
has books? A bookshop shelf.
Yeah, we are unmuted.
Fraser has left the meeting.
Who's there?